Hello everyone, I'm back with another read aloud. Today I'm going to read The Curious Garden by Peter Brown. This is a book we have in the library. You can tell because it has the library, Strathcona Library barcode on there. And I thought it was appropriate because I've been spending a lot of time in the garden with my kids, planting and taking care of some potatoes that we have. And just letting my kids be curious in the garden and letting them observe what's happening. And so I thought it was appropriate. It's spring. Many people are taking care of gardens or can observe gardens around them and watch things happen. So I thought it was a good time to read this book to you. So I have to say that I am reading this book today because of the kind permission of Little Brown and Company, the publishers, and of course the author Peter Brown. The Curious Garden by Peter Brown. There was once a city without gardens or trees or greenery of any kind. Most people spent their time indoors. As you can imagine, it was a very dreary place. Well, that picture looks pretty dreary, right? It's gray and brown and it's not much greenery. However, there was one boy who loved being outside. Even on drizzly days, while everyone else stayed inside, you could always find Liam happily splashing through his neighborhood. It was on one such morning that Liam made several surprising discoveries. He was wandering around the old railway, as he did from time to time, when he stumbled upon a dark stairwell leading up to the tracks. The railway had stopped working ages ago, and since Liam had always wanted to explore the tracks, there was only one thing for the curious boy to do. Liam ran up the stairs, pushed open the door and stepped out onto the railway. The first thing he saw was a lonely patch of colour. You can see a couple of wildflowers here. Wildflowers and plants were the last thing he expected to find up there. But when he took a closer look, it became clear that the plants were dying. They needed a gardener. Liam may not have been a gardener, but he knew that he could help. So he returned to the railway the very next day and got to work. The flowers nearly drowned, and he had a few pruning problems, but the plants patiently waited while Liam found better ways of gardening. You can see it looks like he cut a little bit too much off here and maybe gave it a little bit too much water. But it's like learning any new skill, right? The more you do it, the better you get. As the weeks rolled by, Liam began to feel like a real gardener, and the plants began to feel like a real garden. Most gardens stay in one place, but this garden was no ordinary garden. With miles of open railway ahead of it, the garden was growing restless. It wanted to explore. The tough little weeds and the mosses were the first to move. They popped up further and further down the tracks and were closely followed by the more delicate plants. Over the next few months, Liam and the curious garden explored every corner of the railway. You can see the garden spreading on the tracks. It's brightening up the city. Whoa, I think those are daisies. more flowers springing up. After spending his spring and summer and autumn with the garden, Liam's time on the railway was finally interrupted by winter. Heavy blankets of snow fell on the city that season, and for the first time since he'd become a gardener, Liam could not visit the plants. You see him watching from a distance? Rather than spending his time in the winter worrying about the garden, Liam spent it preparing for spring. Looks like he's doing some research here. After 3 cold months, snow finally began to melt, and Liam rolled his new gardening gear over to the railway. What's he got here? He's got a shovel and a rake, maybe some pruning shears and a watering can, and what looks like his plant dictionary maybe. Winter had taken a toll on the garden. But thanks to Liam's planning, his handy new tools, and a little help from the sun, the plants soon woke up from their winter sleep. People say that talking to your plants helps them grow, and Liam is not just talking, he's singing to his plants. Maybe you could sing to your plants and see if they grow better. The garden had always wanted to explore the rest of the city, and that spring it was finally ready to make its move. Once again, the tough little weeds and the mosses were the first. They popped up further and further from the railway and were closely followed by the more delicate plants. The garden was especially curious about old, forgotten things. Look, the plants are sprouting up through this old, abandoned vehicle. And the sidewalk. You've probably seen that before. A few plants propped up where they didn't belong. That's probably not a good thing, is it? Covering a stop sign? Or a fire hydrant? Other mysteriously popped up all at once. Mysteriously. I think Liam's behind that. But the most surprising thing that popped up were the new gardeners. Look, you got all these new curious kids. Curious about gardening. I like it when people shape their bushes into things. This looks like a moose and an elephant and a giraffe. Many years later, the entire city had blossomed. But of all the new gardeners, Liam's favorite was where it all began. Sorry, I'm going to reread that one. But of all the new gardens, Liam's favorite was where it all began. And if you remember, it began on the railway tracks. And look at the city now. What do you notice that's different about it from the beginning? Let's flip back. So there's the dreary city. What word would you use to describe the city now? I bet there's some great words you could come up with. The end. I do have an activity for you. I'm just going to pause the video, run downstairs, and show you what we've been curious about in our home when it comes to plants. Just bear with me. So we've been curious about growing grass, And if dandelions, sorry, not dandelions, this is a daffodil. If daffodils can survive in water, and what we're most curious about are growing vegetables after we've used them. So you can see we have broccoli first, and we're going to see if that grows. And then we have some spring onion or green onion, and we've noticed that definitely grows. We have some cilantro, and we don't think that grows very well in water. We have the tip of a carrot, and then we have some celery, which is definitely growing. So I'm wondering what you're curious about when it comes to your garden or the plants that are around you. Maybe if you are curious, you could let your teacher know. You could send them an email or a picture or draw them something. Let them know what you're curious about when it comes to the vegetables and the plants that are in your space or your area. And you can CC your teacher librarian if you like. Thank you.